Some of you will already be convinced and already using qualitative data analysis software in your research projects. So I'm guessing I'm really speaking to those who have not yet tried it, and this video will be hopefully help you decide if it is for you or not. For me, at PhD level, I think the benefits of using a software package outweigh the learning curve, because I suppose before my thesis I've already used Nvivo for a number of projects, and knowing how much data I would have for the PhD, I knew that without the software I would struggle to keep it all together and to manipulate it effectively for my data analysis. And also the software really helps you analyze it from different perspectives. I know in the past for smaller projects with limited amount of or types of data, such as a survey with free text responses, I do not always go straight to Nvivo, because Excel or Word can be sufficient for coding simple text and limited text. And also I know that some colleagues opt for manual coding or printing transcripts, cutting them around and moving around. I mean, for me at least, some digital element always need to be there. But it's really thinking about the amount and types of data, the methodological approach and the data analysis approach that you choose, and whether you will have typically data that are okay in a printable or digital form. So when might I opt for a software package such as Nvivo or atlas.ti? So really it's about the volume of data for larger studies, and also you might have data in different formats such as video, audio, text or images, and definitely the software package will be really much easier to handle in atlas.ti or Nvivo. Whereas if you only have transcripts, you might not necessarily need to. Qualitative software is also super useful for when you want to explore links and relationships between your themes and codes and categories. So this is when it can really shine. It can really light your data in a perspective that you haven't been able to before. And finally, I'm sure that if anyone gives you any training on any Nvivo, you will always hear this, that the software won't do the analysis for you. It is who you does the analysis. Or as Phil says from our cohort, software can be a faithful servant but a cruel master. So what he means is that if you can tell the software what to do, it can faithfully follow and do it for you. But if you want the software to tell you to master the analysis for you, then it will be a cruel result, so it won't work. The qualitative tools can be only as good as what you're telling it to do. So what are these powerful features, some of these features in an Nvivo? And this is when I probably not the best person, I might not know all the capabilities of Nvivo, but it's really once you have your data and you start having questions in your head, well, could I see whether this code or node connects to that, and trying to make links between them. It's really when you can then rummage on YouTube and see whether there's a tutorial, or you can ask people, well, I'm really trying to figure out the connections between that. Is there any feature in Nvivo or atlas.ti to make that happen? So some of these powerful features, for instance, you can see here, it's a project map. So here, once you have done the coding of your transcripts and your data, it is possible to have different views of the data. And I think what you see here is a project map. You can display a node, and in this case it's local identity, and where it is referenced visually. So for instance, it's referenced in Margaret's transcript, in Barbara's transcripts, in Ken's video and Helen's audio. And then you can cross-reference it with another node, which is local knowledge, and then see which data sources reference both of them. So it's Margaret, Mary, and Susan. And in this way, by building up maps like this, you can start seeing patterns and relationships within your data. You know, what is common between Margaret, Mary, and James and Susan that then helps, you know, that both references these both nodes. And I think this is where it can get really exciting when you start playing around with that. There's a useful YouTube video on this if you wanted to learn more about that. Another feature in Nvivo is called Framework Matrix, and it is based on a qualitative data analytical approach called the Framework Analysis by Ritchie and Lewis. And this is something that I have used and ended up doing in Excel for my research, and it's something I've used in the past in Excel, but Nvivo has gone much better, and it's something that would be worth trying out. So for instance, if you have a number of interviewees, so here you've got Margaret and Maria, and a number of themes or questions. So here you might look at agriculture or bee fishing or agriculture and see jobs and cost of living and what they all said about those topics or themes. Then you can start collating and summarizing it in a table format. And this visual or table format, the matrix, means that you can start seeing patterns between the themes and the participants and how it all looks. So it offers you a more summary way of framing your analysis, because if you remember in Nvivo, you might see the transcripts differently, or you might see the notes together, but this one also brings all your data together in one place. So this is where Nvivo, for instance, can become really powerful, because it enables you to start building this matrix and start seeing the patterns and relationships across your data. In this slide, you see similar analysis from Phil Moffitt's research, and Phil used atlas.ti. So he had a large amount of data, including video footage and transcripts. And here you can see that he looked at relationships and number of occurrences and various themes. So for instance, when transcribing the video footage, he was looking at the different session, questioning learners, and then displaying in red resistance, or in blue criticizing, or in green explication. And then obviously this visual analysis then helped illuminate some of his findings. And in other ways, there was again, if you're doing content analysis, or you might complement your analysis in other ways, when you might count occurrences of particular themes as particular points or in particular data sources. So this is where software can be really powerful for you, because you won't need to do it, count it manually, but it can work really powerfully for your research. But just to emphasize it can only do this for you if you've set this up in your research design accordingly. And finally, the next question you might be asking is, how do I know which package to use? Is it Nvivo for me, or is it atlas.ti? And for me, I was asking this question as well for my research, because I had used Nvivo before. So in a sense, I wanted to learn atlas.ti just to see what the difference was. And I went along to some of the webinars and workshops, and Steve Wright organized some of these from the medical faculty, and they were really useful because he actually has a session on exactly this choice. I also consulted YouTube tutorials, and so they've been brilliant at helping me to figure out which one to use. And obviously one of the obvious deciding factors is which one you have access to. So I can't remember if both were accessible at Lancaster at the time when I had to decide, but I know Nvivo was available at my institution. So if you were lucky enough to have access to both, then another deciding factor might be what kind of data you have. at the time I was advised that if I had more textual data, mainly textual data, and not so much multimedia, then Nvivo was probably better suited, whilst for those with more multimedia type data, atlas.ti might have suited better. But again, I wouldn't want to make this judgment for you, and things change all the time with software. So what you can do is check out the tutorials, take part of the workshops, and then figure it out for yourself. I think another research was showing that the choice of qualitative software seemed to show that colleagues and peers seem to have a large influence on people's choice of software. So again, do talk to your colleagues and peers to make this decision. And just to show you, in my analysis stage, I also found books really useful, which Steve Wright recommended. And because I ended up using Nvivo, I consulted these books by Baisley, and I found them really helpful. And this is where one of my proudest part in my thesis, which was using or trying out a new methodological approach, came from the Baisley book, is basically creating poems as part of my analytical process. So which is what I was gonna talk about next. So I really like experimenting with different analytical approaches and data collection approaches. And I'm a big fan of using visual data elicitation techniques, whether drawings, diagrams, and so on. However, before my PhD thesis, I hadn't come across the idea of using poems for data analysis. And this is the idea I got from the Baisley book. And as I was trying to make sense of my transcripts, I tried to put them into a poem. And I ended up with a number of engineering and management poems. And I then slowly crystallized them into one poem for engineering and one poem for management. And you can read them in my thesis, or look at this presentation that I linked here on YouTube from the Manchester Methods Fair, which also you can hear the poem there. And as I said in the introduction, it's having fun with your research, trying out new things. I felt really good. And here I think the key was that when you try and put your knowledge into a different format, you arrive at new meanings and understandings. And in this case, the poem is a genre which has stylistics and other literary genre conventions. And when moving your interviewee's voice into a poem, whilst at the same time trying to adhere to conventions, you're trying to glean a clear understanding of and meaning of what they're trying to say. And so for me, the process of writing poems really helped move my analysis along and drawing some of the key conclusions for my study. So I hope that also in your research you leave a little bit of scope for experimenting methodologically, because I think it is fun.